What is up, people? Matt here, back for another top 5. So instead of doing top 5 best games or top 5 worst games, I thought I'd do something a bit different. So today's top 5 will be the top 5 controllers for games, or my top 5 favourite controllers. So before we get started, let's explain what constitutes the ratings for the controllers. Number 1, comfortability. The controller must feel comfortable somewhat in the hands. The button layout is also another important one. How much it developed from its predecessor is another one. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. At number 5 is the Nintendo 64 controller. Now, why the N64 controller, you might be asking? Well, simply because of its infamy for being a controller. It's massive. It also doesn't look right in terms of controller. But at the same time, it was very innovative, so to speak. So you got your usual D-pad, just a big red start button, an analog stick, button inputs, triggers, although they're very strange triggers, and there's another little trigger on the back. And for the first time ever, there was actually a slot to put in your rumble pack or vibration now. So strangely enough, for so many years, this one controller has stumped people about how you're meant to hold it. Some people believe you're meant to hold it like this, while others believe you're meant to hold it like this. Personally, I don't know. I do hold it like this instead of this, because this doesn't, you can't get to the analog stick. As well as at least with this, you've got your fingers are on these buttons, your other hand, your thumb is on the thing, and you've got a finger behind to get the trigger. Obviously you can't get to the D-pad, but you can just quickly switch button there, no problem really. But yeah, it's just this controller, although very strange and some people couldn't get on with it, I think it started the trend for controllers to have analog sticks. You know, it started it, but it wasn't great. That's why it's only at number 5. So although this isn't actually number 4, this is to explain about number 4. So number 4 is the, well, I suppose I'll just call it the Dual Shocks. So the Dual Shock 2, the first era of Dual Shocks, Dual Shock 2 is number 4. But how did it improve from the original PlayStation controller? Well, although they are nearly the same, the Dual Shock 2 obviously included analog sticks, as well as an analog button, as well as changing the size of the triggers. So on the original PlayStation controller, the L2 and R2 were the same size as L1 and L2, or R1 and L1. But on the DualShock 2, the L2 and R2 are bigger than L1 and R1. It's simply so you know, that's L2, that's R2, that's L1, that's L1. Again, not much change besides that. The D-pad's the same, select and start's still there, the button inputs are still the same. Other than that, but the DualShock 2 is a definite improvement over the original PlayStation controller, there's no doubt about it, so that's why it's number 4. So, number 3 is one of the newest additions to the controller family, the DualShock 4. Now, what's changed on a DualShock 4 compared to DualShock 3, 2 and 1? A couple of things. D-pad's still the same. Analog sticks still there obviously, but they're now kind of, there's more of a bump in the analog stick instead of it just being a massive bump. Yeah, I can cope with it. You know, I don't think it's worse or improvement. Start button and select button thrown out. Don't need them anymore apparently. So instead you just get a little Sony button that you press. What else? There's a touchpad, obviously, the touchpad. A share button to share video game footage. Options button, that's kind of the start button now basically. R1 and L2 have changed, they're now circular or rounded. Yeah, I don't mind them, they're alright I guess. So L2 and R2 have now, they've evolved into more trigger like they should be really, but I still prefer other ones to these, although they're okay. It's an improvement on the DualShock 3, so you can't really complain about it, to be honest. What else? Obviously you got your microphone slot in the bottom, charger, USB in the top. There's a light bar to show which player you are. It also lights up if you're playing a game and if you're dying or if you've got full health. Yeah, so basically this controller is how a controller should be. However, why is it only number 3? I'm going to be blunt. I think it's best to be blunt. These controllers, the DualShock 4 feels extremely cheaply made. Extremely. Considering they're £55, they feel extremely cheap. I've had issues with the thumbsticks, I've had issues with the button inputs, the buttons started sticking. Some people have complained about the thumbsticks rubber wearing off. I actually had to replace my original one. So yeah, this could have been higher on the list if it hadn't have had if it doesn't have so many more maintenance problems as opposed to practical problems. The controller, don't get me wrong, the controller is extremely comfortable, but it just feels cheap, and that's why there's a problem with it. So number 2 is the Gamecube controller. So what's so great about the Gamecube controller? Well, its predecessor, the N64 controller, was quite fat, let's be honest. It was quite large. The N64, the Gamecube controller's somewhat thin, I suppose. I don't like these pointy handles because, you know, they don't feel great, but they're okay. There's still a D-pad, although the D-pad's probably one of the smallest things on the controller, nearly. I don't know why that's there, to be honest. There's a start and pause button, so there's only one button, so if you want to pause and start, you only press that one. So it makes it simple, which is kind of good. The triggers have been changed, and these are some of the weirdest triggers I've ever seen on a controller, but they work. They're so strange. They're curved. They are literally curved. Your fingers actually fit into the curves, which does make it comfortable. And you can press it in, you can just press it, or you can actually press it properly, so that's good. There's a Z button, which on the N64 controller it was the little trigger at the back, but now it's been resorted to a little button on top of one of the triggers, which is okay. The button inputs on the N64 controller, the yellow ones, have been changed to now it's just an analog stick basically, and it works. It's all good. It's all good. It's okay. Obviously now the primary buttons are A, B, X and Y. They're fine, perfect positioning to be honest, although, well no, they are perfectly positioned because A is your big button, this is the important button, this is the less important button, these are also buttons. It works, okay, it tells you what, you know, it explains itself. The analog stick's back, as you can see, and it feels better than the N64 analog stick, let's be honest. It's more comfortable, it's in the right position. If you play Mario Party, you probably won't have so many blisters, but you still will get them. But other than that, it's a vast improvement over the N64 controller, I feel, and that's why it deserved the number 2 spot on the list. So, my favourite controller is the N64. No, it's not the N64. This is the Xbox 360. Why is this my favourite controller? Well, look at it. I can't see anything wrong with this controller, to be honest. There's a few things I'm going to mention, but other than that, it looks fine. There is no difference. I feel this is... They did okay with this controller, let's be honest. The buttons, they're there, they're comfortable. The analog sticks are extremely comfortable. These are the most comfortable analog sticks I've ever on a controller. They're well positioned, although they look strange, they actually do fit in your hand rather well. There's a start and back button, there's a dashboard button. The D-pad's a bit meh, but you know, they can't get everything right. The triggers, these are what the PlayStation 4 triggers should be like. Smooth, and they're perfect. They did that well. Now, what's the one gripe I have about this controller? The bumpers. These bumpers are rubbish. Let's not beat about the bush. They are thin. They don't stick out very much. They just don't feel natural pressing them. Well, at least occasionally they don't. Now, I have to be honest. I'm maybe not being fair with the bumpers. My left bumper is a bit broken. I dropped it and it doesn't register very well anymore. In fact, when I'm playing games that use the L bumper, it actually does hurt my hand occasionally. But my right bumper's fine. So right bumper's okay, left bumper no need fixing. But other than that, yeah, it's alright. Headphone slot, you know, charge slot, simple stuff. But yeah, I keep going about why is the N64 in my brain? Anyway, the Xbox 360 controller is my favourite controller of all time. Now, there are so many other controllers I could have talked about, but the fact is I haven't played every console, and I can't very well review a controller I've never even held. So that's why some of the more revolutionary controllers like the NES and the SNES controllers aren't on the list, because I don't own a NES or a SNES, so I haven't got the controllers, so I can't put them on the list. But yeah, as always guys, thank you for watching. I will see you on the next video. Bye now.